If you think a chosen destiny always begins with a beautiful dawn, then you've never heard this story. Welcome to the Iron Age Chronicles. Don't forget to subscribe to join us in unraveling myths, tragedies, and the brutal truths buried by time. It's the third watch of the night. Wind howls through the thick stone walls of Hoalu's citadel. Inside the royal chamber, cries of childbirth pierce the silent darkness. The queen clutches her belly in agony. Sweat drenches her. Flickering candlelight illuminates her pale face and resolute eyes. A child is about to be born. Not an ordinary child, but the blood of an emperor, the seed of destiny. The royal physician breathes a sigh of relief as the first cry echoes. A prince is born, healthy, with blazing eyes. His tiny fists clenched tight. But while the palace attendants rejoice, a lone figure steps forward, the old state oracle. Clad in dark robes, holding a bundle of divining bamboo, he offers no congratulations. His gaze fixes on the child. Then he shakes his head faintly. His lips utter chilling words. This child, born under the heavenly spear hour, a king's fate, but he will bring a blood curse. One day, the throne will bleed because of him. The prophecy strikes like a blade into the heart of Emperor Đinh Tiên Hoàng. He says nothing, only tightens his grip on the sword hilt at his waist. In the emperor's eyes, there's not just worry, there's fear. Fear that his son will destroy the kingdom he bled to build. That night, no watch drums sound, only hurried footsteps. Whispered plots in the inner palace. A secret decree is issued. Prince Đinh Trí, the queen's only son, will be taken from the palace. The queen weeps, kneeling at the emperor's feet. She dares not defy him, but her heart shatters. With all her maternal love, she begs to choose who will take her child. The chosen one is Zen Master Phap Un, a revered monk who once saved the emperor before he claimed the throne. He lives in seclusion on Intu Mountain, detached from worldly affairs. But that night, transcends, in the monk's arms, the child sleeps soundly, eyes still closed, but fists still clenched, as if grasping a fate. No one knows that. In the moment of parting, the queen whispered to her son, "If one day you return, don't let vengeance guide you. Let the people's hearts be your sword, and let virtue be your shield." The night wind still blows, but in a mother's heart, a storm has risen, and from that moment, the legend begins. Morning mist falls coldly on ancient stone steps. Intu Mountain looms like a sleeping giant amid white clouds. Deep within its heart, a small temple hides beneath the canopy of ancient trees. Silent, timeless, and solitary. Inside the temple, a toddler, not yet two, stumbles along. Shaved head, brown robe, clutching a small stick like a sword. He doesn't know who he is, doesn't know his mother. He only calls his master grandfather. The sound of the wooden fish is his music. The temple bell, his friend. He is Đinh Trí, the one no one may speak of. A secret buried in the forest. Zen Master Phap Un raises him with a father's love but a teacher's strictness. He teaches Trí to read Chinese characters at 3, at 5, martial arts by 6. Trí can meditate for hours in the morning mist. Villagers whisper of a sage on Intu Mountain raising a young dragon. No one dares climb the peak. No one suspects the boy was once a prince. Trí grows up among pine forests, cold streams, and ancient sutras. No friends, no games, only books, meditation, and traditional martial forms. But in his eyes burns a spark, unlike that of an ordinary novice. Something restless. One winter night, as snow blankets the temple roof, Trí asks his master, "Where did I come from?" The Zen master gazes at him for a long time, then says only, You came from the dusty world, and to it you will return. But not today. The answer doesn't satisfy him, but he asks no more. He begins to dream more. Dreams of golden palaces, of blood, of a woman's cries, and a familiar whisper in his ear. Let the people's hearts be your sword, and let virtue be your shield. The dreams repeat, like an omen, like an unfinished song. Then one day, a fierce wind sweeps the forest. A band of imperial soldiers storms the village below. They conscript labourers, size a rice, beat the elderly. Cries echo up to the temple. Tree begs to go help the villagers. The master forbids it. But that night, he sneaks away, carrying a bamboo staff. He arrives, sees soldiers beating an old man to the ground. Without thinking, 3 charges. 1 punch. On a kick. The entire band of soldiers doesn't know what hit them. The villagers stand stunned. A small novice monk felling a group of soldiers. They bow in thanks. Tree only says, "Don't thank me. Thank the heavens. Justice still exists." He returns to the temple in the dark. The master is waiting. No scolding. Just a bowl of hot water handed to him. "You've realized who you are, haven't you?" Tree is silent, then nods slightly. "Then, from now on, you must learn twice as hard, for the day you return to the mortal world is drawing near." From that day, Tree is taught things no one else learns. The history of dynasties, battle tactics, strategy, how to read hearts, how to hold a kingdom without a sword, and when a sword is needed, how to wield it without losing conscience. The master gives Tree a wooden box. Inside is a jade pendant shaped like a dragon, and a red cloth embroidered with the character Tree in gold thread. When you descend the mountain, you'll need these, not to prove who you are, but to remind you why you were born. Tree grips the jade tightly. His eyes don't well with tears, but his heart burns like fire. The time hasn't come, but that day is drawing near. The story continues. Mist swirls like smoke over the mountain's peak. Wind howls in gusts, weaving through stone crevices, scattering crimson maple leaves across ancient steps. Ding Tree is now 15, tall and lean, swift, his eyes like a blade slicing through the fog. Though clad in a novice's brown robe, he carries an unmistakable air, a royal bearing veiled in the simplicity of a monk. Each morning, Tree rises at the hour of the ox. He hauls water from the stream to the temple, brews tea, sweeps the courtyard, meditates. Then, he trains in martial arts at the foot of a waterfall. His strikes are no longer imitations but creations of his own. He has a strange habit, carving small dragon figures into tree trunks with a wooden knife. 1 dragon each day. Each day, a dragon gains a new detail. "What are you carving?" Zen Master Fap Un asks one day, catching him by surprise. "My dream." What dream? Tree looks up, unflinching the dream of soaring, not with fire, but with light. The master nods, his eyes tinged with sadness. Soaring comes at a cost. Even dragons, to rise from the mud, must accept torn scales. Day by day, Tree grows distinct. He reads military texts like fairy tales. Once, he outlines a strategy for a hypothetical siege, leaving the master stunned. "Where did you learn this?" "From books and from dreams." In those years, a band of mountain bandits begins terrorizing the region. They steal rice, burn village homes. One day, a group of villagers is ambushed. Tree, sent to fetch medicine for the master, sees it from afar. Without hesitation, he charges, alone, with a bamboo staff. and his brown robe. He fells 3 bandits in a flash. For the first time, human blood stains his hands. For the first time, Tree feels a brutal truth. If you don't stand up, you'll forever be a bystander. Rumors spread of a novice monk who flies like a bird, strikes like a dragon. Local officials take notice. An old soldier climbs the mountain to meet the master, whispering, "Master, who is he really?" The master doesn't answer. He only pours tea. One night, Tree dreams a nightmare. Fire engulfs the capital. A woman cradles a lifeless child. Weeping under moonlight, she turns. It's the queen. Tree, remember, blood cannot wash away blood. A sword cannot hold hearts. Tree wakes, his robe soaked in sweat. He steps into the courtyard, staring at the sky. A star falls, a long streak, like a sword slashing the black night. The next morning, he asks the master to let him descend the mountain. "You're not ready," the master says, "but the people have suffered too long. How will you go with my feet?" And eyes that have seen enough? Silence stretches. Then the master hands him a cloth bundle. Inside is a new robe, a short dagger, and a bamboo strip carved with Tree's name. Go, but don't let your heart fall into darkness. Keep that light, for your light will be fire for the nation. Tree bows deeply, for the last time, then turns to leave. The clouds still drift, but part of the mountain feels empty. Part of the sky has opened, and the road back to the mortal world begins its countdown. Hualu, once the unyielding heart of Đại Cồ Việt, now resembles a tapestry palace, fraying at every seam. The December sky is grim, clouds swirling above Ngọ Môn like an ill omen. The once proud city walls, now moss-covered, stand silent, as if eavesdropping on the scheming whispers in the shadows. After the sudden death of Đinh Tiên Hoàng, everything unravels. No one knows exactly what happened that night. Some say he was assassinated by a trusted guard. Others whisper that courtiers, resentful of his iron rule, plotted his demise. But one truth is clear: a king is dead, and the throne cannot remain empty. The first queen mother of Crown Prince Đinh Tuan collapses upon hearing of her husband's death. In a palace filled with wails, tears cannot mask the chaos, spreading like wildfire through dry fields. Lê Hoan, the 10 circuits general, rises like a starving tyre, backed by generals and the army. He swiftly declares himself protector, citing the prince's youth, while loyalists debate the legality. His troops already line the steps of the Kien Thien Hall. Rumours spread faster than the wind. They say the late king had prepared a secret edict, naming Đinh Trí, the lost prince, as the true heir. But that edict vanished. A small fire in the royal archive burned it to ash. Or so they want you to believe. Those who remember Đinh Trí, a few aging officials, a handful of eunuchs, suddenly fall silent. Some are stripped of rank. Others disappear in the night. Lê Hoan doesn't just control the military. He controls the court's memory. In a roadside tea house near the capital, commoners murmur, "Impossible. Prince Trí died long ago." But others retort, "No. Someone saw a monk on In Tu mountain, fighting bandits like the wind, speaking like he's read 100 books." Lê Hoan hears these whispers, and he fears that a shadow from the past will return to claim the throne. He issues a secret decree: find every boy named Trí, old or young, big or small. Anyone who knows and stays silent will be treated as a traitor. From the lowlands to the highlands, every village, temple, and home is searched. Monks are interrogated. Some die rather than speak. But the one they seek, Đinh Trí, is no longer on Yen Tu mountain. By then, Trí has descended the mountain. His gaze burns with the resolve of one stepping into a vortex of power. He learns of his father's death through a message hidden in a packet of dried tea, delivered by a stranger. A small note reads, "The king is gone. The court is split. Your name is struck from the stone. Come back. The people need you." Tree reads it, his hands trembling. He packs his meager belongings, a cloth bundle, a bamboo strip, an old dragon pendant, and slips away from the temple in the fog. On the road to the capital, he sees villagers' bodies, beaten and strung up by soldiers, dangling by rice paddies. An old woman with a broken arm, struck for not yielding enough grain. An orphan girl curled in banana leaves, eyes wide, too broken to cry. Tree's heart pounds like a war drum. Not the chant of Buddha, but blood, calling to blood. Not vengeance, duty. Reaching the outskirts of the capital, he's stopped by a patrol, sensing something off. They move to question him. Tree feigns stupidity, posing as a salt merchant, and slips away with cunning. But a young soldier mutters his eyes. They're just like the late emperor's. That night, Tree sits by a fire in the rickety hut of an old woodcutter. Wind howls outside. He knows entering the capital now is like stepping into a tiger's jaws. But he also knows that if he doesn't go, the people who still believe in the name Din will have no one to follow. In the capital, Lei Huan begins rebuilding the main hall, raising his own banners. The Din dynasty's flags are torn down. A child is crowned as a figurehead king, but true power lies with the usurper. A new court rises from the ashes. Yet the shadow of Din Tree, though still unseen, remains an unrelenting obsession. And elsewhere, on a muddy village path, a young man in plain cloth walks forward. Step by step, dust swirls in the wind. But in his eyes, the road is clear, not to seize a throne, but to reclaim honor, and to take back a nation that once bore his father's name. Morning in the borderlands of Hoalu begins with the crow of roosters mingling with the clatter of hooves. No longer the familiar tread of the court's patrol troops, but the frantic steps of fleeing villagers, burdened with belongings, escaping raids, manhunts, and plunder disguised as justice. When Din Tree sets foot on the banks of the Nure River, where the capital meets rural hamlets, he realizes he's no longer a novice monk in the forest, no longer an anonymous disciple of the way. He's now the protagonist, in a tragedy slowly taking shape. Tree eyes a small boat, posing as a spice trader from the highlands. Drifting down the river, he sees scorched fields, homes reduced to charred wooden frames by soldiers looting. Children cry soundlessly. Elders hide in earthen cellars. Everywhere, fear reigns, alongside eyes yearning for a miracle. In a nearby village raised by fire, he meets a hunched old man burying his granddaughter's body. The man doesn't weep, only mutters, "If someone would rise to save the people, I'd give them all my fields." Tree says nothing. He only clasps his hands and bows, but his eyes are cold and sharp as a blade. That evening, in the thatched hut of a refugee, Tree listens to their stories. They tell of villagers who fought bandits, now arrested. Those left behind can only hide or endure. A young man says, if someone dared to lead, the people would follow. But now, everyone's afraid. No one believes in goodness anymore. A young mother adds, they say there was a prince, long ago, banished from the palace, who became a monk and returned to save us. But it's probably just a bedtime story for kids. Tree smiles sadly. His own story, now a hazy legend. The next day, Tree begins stopping at villages. He doesn't reveal his identity. He helps repair bridges, build dikes, heal the sick, with remedies learned from his master. The villagers start calling him Teacher Tree, the one who takes nothing but appears when needed. One day, a greedy informant betrays him. Soldiers swarm the village, surrounding it. Tree doesn't flee. He steps into the courtyard. Back straight. Do you know who I am? The soldiers freeze. One draws his sword. Tree leaps. A spinning kick, knocking the blade from the man's hand. He doesn't strike again. He only says, leave. If you still have any humanity. The villagers gather behind Tree. The soldiers retreat. From then on, the name Tree spreads far. No one dares call him a prince. But all believe this is the one who can save the nation. Word reaches Lei Huan. Furious. He summons his spies. But what worries him more, minor officials, peasants, even some soldiers, are quietly supporting the man in brown. In the shadows, an uprising takes shape. No drums, no rallying cries, just a smouldering faith spreading everywhere. Tree knows the time has come, but he needs allies, people who understand politics, warfare. He sets out to find one man, General Pham Cu Leung, who once swore to Di, protecting Đinh Tiên Hoàng, now living in seclusion by the Dai River. Tree arrives and kneels before him. I am Tree, son of the king, the one forgotten. Pham Cu Leung studies the young man before him. He sees no arrogancy, only the eyes of one who carries a nation in his heart. He asks one question. What do you want? Not the throne. Justice for the people. Pham Cu Leung laughs. A deep, earth-shaking laugh. Then I'll follow you, to fight once more for someone worthy. And from that moment, a new wind begins to blow. A prince without a throne, a general without an army. But behind them, a nation is awakening. The sky darkens in the west of the capital, heralding not a storm of rain, but a tempest of human hearts. In the final months of that year, Lei Huan pour every resource into hunting Din Tree's trail. He knows once the people truly believe the prince lives, the throne he seized will become a nest of fire ants. Tree, now with Pham Cu Leung at his side, begins crafting a grand plan. Beyond aiding villages along the Dai River to resist court soldiers, they build a network for spreading news, weaving tales of the man in brown, with dragon's eyes, a new symbol of hope. They use pigeons to carry messages, tea houses for gatherings, festivals to mask secret training. Village youths practice martial arts by night. Women learn healing and first aid. Children memorize passcodes through nursery rhymes, a nameless movement, without flags or a public leader, spreads faster than any imperial decree can ban. One night, a tax convoy under Lei Huan's command is ambushed. No one is killed, but all the rice and silver is distributed to the people. Only a scrap of cloth embroidered with a coiling dragon is left behind, a sign needing no words. Lei Huan erupts in fury. He not only tightens military control, but offers a massive reward for Tree's capture or death. Yet, instead of cowing the people, it fuels their rage. Tree and Cu Leung avoid direct confrontation. They employ guerrilla tactics, appearing in one place, then vanishing like smoke. Each appearance saves a village, prompts a minor official to resign, or makes a granary disappear. In a secret meeting at Vatnian Temple, Tree unveils his boldest plan: infiltrate the capital, gather proof of Lei Huan's throne manipulation, and recover the burned edict if it still exists. Pham Cu Leung objects. Too dangerous. The capital is a tiger's den, not a place for a young dragon to test its strength. Tree replies, without evidence, I'm just a rebel. With it, I'm the heir. The difference lies in a single sheet of paper. They seek out one man, Chen Lum, a clerk who served under Đinh Tiên Hoàng, now demoted for refusing to align with Lei Huan. old and half-blind. His memory is a living archive. Junlum confirms, I saw the edict. I copied a duplicate myself. If it survives, it's in the old archive. Now, Li Huan's ritual storage, guarded day and night. Tree doesn't hesitate. On a moonless night, he and 2 former soldiers, disguised as merchants, slip into the capital. They pass through the northern gate, the least guarded. Beneath thick cloaks and merchant packs lie short daggers, hidden weapons, and a detailed map smuggled out by a loyal eunuch. Tree sneaks into the archive during a guard shift change. The old room reeks of ink and ash. He searches every drawer, every desk, until his fingers brush the bottom of a large wooden chest where he finds a yellowed scroll, still faintly scented with sandalwood. Tree unrolls it. His father's handwriting. I decree Ding Trí, of the true line, to succeed me upon my death. His hands tremble, but before he can hide it, a noise erupts behind him. A soldier. They clash. Tree and his men fight fiercely. In the chaos, a corner of the scroll tears, but the core remains intact. They escape through an old tunnel, leading out of the citadel, a secret known only to the Din clan. Back in the borderlands, Tree unfurls the edict before the villagers. No one speaks. Then an old man kneels, shouting, Long live the true Lord. The whole village kneels. And the flame, now no longer hidden in shadow, rises openly. After the night, the edict was brought to light. Everything changed. No longer mere rumors. No longer legends. Đinh Trí, the true son of the late emperor, now held proof. And with that proof, he could step out of the shadows. But the path from faith to victory was strewn with thorns. News of the edict spread across the Red River Delta. Every village sparked like kindling. People whispered by hearths. Young men secretly trained with swords in temple courtyards. Illos midnight. Speaking of ancestors and the nation's fate, Tree resolved to enter a new phase. He was no longer just a wanderer helping villages. Now, he was a unifier of forces, raising an army not to plunder, but to defend what was right. With Pham Kut Tree formed an alliance of peasant leaders. Each region had a commander. Their name the Red Dragon Militia. No lavish banners. Only red cloth tied to their left arms, a mark for those fighting for the Din clan's honor. Meanwhile, Lei Huan intensified his assault. He established outposts to crush the militia, using prisoners and children as hostages. His reprisals grew ever crueler. One night, Tree received word a militia village in Ninh Bình had been burned to the ground. Over 30 people perished in the village temple's flames. Tree stood silent before the ashes, his fists clenched. I can't just speak of justice. I must fight for it. The guerrilla war escalated. The militia used forests and rice paddies to outmaneuver. They built decoys, luring court troops to chase phantoms in the night. Once, Tree posed as a fortune teller, infiltrating a duke's manor to steal maps of granaries. 3 days later, that granary went up in flames, its rice shared among the region's people. But war was no game. A failed ambush saw 30 militiamen captured alive. Lei Huan ordered their execution in the main market. In broad daylight, heads hung on the city gates. Blood stained the streets. Tree witnessed it himself. He knelt before each head, vowing no death will be in vain. I swear it. The losses forced him to grow up fast. Tree no longer relied solely on kindness. He learned strategy, learned calculation, when to strike, when to retreat, not out of fear, but to survive and win. At a gathering in Vạn Phúc village, Tree stood before over 300 peasants, former warriors, chulas, even women wielding swords. He didn't rally with grand words. He said only, "I'm no saint, nor do I seek to be king, but if no one steps up, I will. For you, for my father, and for this nation." The cry of "Long live Tree" roared like thunder. That night, for the first time, the militia camped in the forest with true conviction. They were no longer fugitives. They were a resistance army. And Tree, from a novice monk, had become the leader of a bloody yet hopeful revolution. As the Red Dragon militia began seizing control of the regions surrounding the capital, Lê Hoan could no longer sit idle. He summoned a grand council of generals, determined to devise a plan to crush Đinh Trí before his forces could ignite a true revolutionary movement. Meanwhile, Trí and his militia commanders gathered in an ancient temple by the To Lik River. Maps hung across the walls, routes for supplies, communications, and ambushes were drawn in black and red ink. Trí proposed a daring strategy: launch small-scale attacks along the court's supply lines, creating the illusion of a massive assault brewing from the south, while secretly circling west to approach the capital through hidden forest trails. One moonless night, Trí personally led a special task force into the outskirts of the capital. Disguised as merchants carrying medicinal goods, they cautiously passed through checkpoints. Trí silently observed the routes, memorizing guard positions and lesser-used side gates, searching for a breach point. Inside the capital, whispers of the forgotten son of the late emperor began to stir among the people. A few noble houses secretly sent supplies. Some city guards hesitated when ordered to arrest anyone linked to the name Trí. One night, a group of disguised militiamen infiltrated the main market, hanging a large red cloth, inscribed with, "The people do not forget the rightful heir." By morning, the city buzzed with excitement. Lê Hoan, enraged, ordered a house-by-house, street-by-street manhunt, but instead of finding culprits, they discovered red cloths tied to the feet of a Buddha statue in a small temple. In the forested outskirts, Trí orchestrated a series of lightning raids on supply outposts. The militia struck swiftly and vanished. Court troops fell into disarray. Supply routes were severed. The morale of Lê Hoan's army began to waver. During a brief skirmish near Lang village, Trí narrowly escaped serious injury. An arrow grazed his shoulder, leaving a blood-soaked stain on his robe. Yet he didn't fall. Standing tall, he shouted, "I live so you keep faith. If I die, let my blood forge your freedom." His words spread like wildfire. Villagers began painting red dragons on their doors. Children played evade the court soldiers. With the role of the prince being the most coveted, Lê Hoan realized he wasn't fighting a single man. He was facing a nation's awakened spirit, an invisible fear. To counter it, he issued a decree: anyone capturing Trí would receive not only gold and silver, but a noble title. Secretly, he also reached out to former militia leaders, using wealth and power to sow division. Some wavered. In a clandestine meeting, one of Trí's lieutenants suggested, "Perhaps we should stop. Negociate. The people suffer less now. Maybe we don't need to fight on." Trí was silent for a moment, then said, "You may leave. But remember this. If we stop today, our children will live as slaves tomorrow. Freedom doesn't come from promises, but from blood already spilled." The lieutenant bowed his head. No one spoke further. That night, Trí wrote a letter to his mother, hidden in a bamboo case, entrusted to a courier. In it, he wrote, "Mother, if I die, do not weep. I am not lost. I become light for those still blind. And if I live, I will bring you back to the main hall, to sit where you once did." As the sun rose, Trí climbed a hill overlooking Hoalu's skyline. His eyes blazed. His hand gripped an old wooden sword. for the battle ahead would no longer be fought in shadows, but in fire and blood and an unbreakable faith. That morning, as mist still clung to the bamboo tops, the sound of drums echoed from the Red Dragon militia's camp 3 long beats. One short, the signal for the start of their greatest counterattack since Tree left the temple. The previous night, Tree and Pham Kulung held a secret meeting with their commanders. The target Hoa Long Fortress, a key stronghold south of the capital, housing grain stores and serving as Lei Huan's supply hub. Seizing it would choke the court's lifeline. The plan split into 3 prongs. One team would attack head-on to draw fire. Another would circle to the western hills, where a hidden trail led to the rear outpost. The main force, led by Tree himself, would storm the command center once the enemy was scattered. Before setting out, Tree walked through the ranks, touching each soldier's shoulder, whispering, "Not all of us will survive, but all of us will live forever in the people's hearts." The air fell silent. Then came the clatter of weapons, a vow unspoken. As the sun rose, the battle began. The first team ignited a signal flare, charging the main gate. The cry, "Red Dragon," thundered across the fields. The court's troops, caught off guard, reacted sluggishly to the onslaught. On the hills, the second team swiftly seized artillery posts. The rear supply route was cut. The court's forces fell into chaos, their communications severed. Tree led the main force like a whirlwind. They crossed moats, scaled barricades, and stormed the command center through blinding dust and smoke. There, Tree faced the fortress commander, an old general who had once taught him swordsmanship as a child. They locked eyes. "I taught you how to wield a sword. I never imagined you'd use it against the court," the general said. Tree replied, "Not against the court. Against the thief who stole the throne." They clashed. No hatred, only respect. But Tree had to win. When the old man's sword fell, Tree didn't strike again. He said, "Only live, to tell the world that justice has not died." The fortress fell. The Red Dragon flag flew over Hoa Long's gate. The militia cheered, but Tree didn't smile. He looked north, where Hoa Lu's capital stood resolute, and knew the greatest battle still awaited. Word of the victory spread like wildfire. Villagers rejoiced, bringing rice, clothes, and medicine to the militia. In many places, cour soldiers deserted, begging to join the cause. Lei Huan knew he could no longer underestimate them. He ordered total mobilization, summoning even retired generals. He raised taxes, plundered more grain. The capital entered a state of siege. That night, Tree sat and wrote a letter to the people. "My compatriots, I do not seek to be king, but if it ends our nation's groans, gives you food and clothing, and frees children from fearing the dark, then I will rise, not for the throne, but for honor, for my father, and for you." The letter was copied, passed hand to hand, posted in markets, on city walls, at village gates, and the next morning, the drums of rebellion sounded again, but this time, not just from Tree's camp. They echoed from every corner of the land. Hoa Lu's capital slumbers, but within its stone walls, the chessboard of politics never rests. Each move Tree makes is no longer just military strategy. It's a deadly game between 2 unrelenting wills. One, a usurper. The other, the rightful heir. After the victory at Hoa Long, Tree didn't march straight to the capital as many expected. He knew a quick win wasn't a lasting one. What did he need? Information, intelligence, and cracks within Lei Huan's own ranks. In the militia's camp, Pham Kulung proposed, "We could take Kwai Chou, a stepping stone to advance." But Tree shook his head. Let Lei Howen withdraw his troops himself. We only need to light the fuse. That fuse was a mole. Tree sent men to contact Tren Lum, a former clerk still serving in the court. Indebted to Đinh Tiên Hoàng. One moonless night. They met at One Pillar Pagoda. Tren Lum handed Tree a map of a secret chamber beneath the main hall, where the court's most confidential documents were kept. What's there? Tree asked. Diplomatic letters, and ledgers showing Lei Huan is selling borderlands to the Song to maintain peace. That was the trump card. If Tree exposed these documents, the people would turn against Lei Huan. But how to retrieve them? The chamber was the most heavily guarded place in the court. Tree decided to risk it. On the first night of the 8th month, he disguised himself as a monk, leading a Buddhist prayer procession to the main hall, escorted by militiamen in disguise. They entered the inner palace. As the peace ceremony unfolded, Tree slipped toward the rear hall. Following the hidden passage from Tren Lum's map, he reached a wooden door. Picking the lock with a dagger, inside was a sealed wooden chest. He opened it, hundreds of documents, handwritten letters, and a contract. Tree's hands trembled after reading a few lines Side Yen Fur to the Song in exchange for military aid in case of rebellion. He knew this was the fatal blow. Tree didn't take it. He copied it, encoded it, and slipped away in the night, leaving no trace. 3 days later, the copies appeared on Hoalu's city walls, in the main market, even in the homes of high officials. Lei Huan was livid, but it was too late. Neutral courtiers began to doubt. The army fractured. In their barracks, officers secretly messaged the militia, "If you act, we won't stand in your way." Tree convened the militia council at Dung Sa village's communal hall. He declared, "We're no longer mere rebels. Now, we represent justice. The time has come to advance." On the 14th day, the militia split into 5 columns. They marched toward the capital, not as an army seizing a throne, but as a wave sweeping away injustice. Lei Huan knew this day would come. He didn't flee. He stayed, organizing defenses. But he knew no one believed in him anymore, and when the drums thundered from 5 directions outside the city, he uttered only "I've lost," not to swords or spears, but because the people's hearts are no longer mine. When the drums fell silent, the entire capital held its breath. Lei Huan stood motionless in the main hall, hands clasped behind his back, gazing through silk curtains toward the city gates. In the dim light, he was no longer the all-powerful protector, but a man alone and uncertain. Yet the court couldn't collapse in silence. Lei Huan ordered an emergency council. 12 generals attended. Some sat quiet. Others exchanged glances. No one dared speak. Finally, Lei Huan broke the silence. "If you no longer trust me, say it. If you still see me as your ruler, take up your swords." At that moment, Pham Gut Lung was in the outskirts, leading 3 columns closing in from the east. Tree stayed out of sight. He sent only a message: "Return the throne, or it will be blood." Lei Huan sneered as he read the letter. "He thinks I'll fear him. The throne isn't something to return. It's to be held at all costs." He ordered a lockdown. City gates sealed. Civilians evacuated from battle zones. Barricades raised around King Tian Hall. Meanwhile, Tree didn't attack. He waited, waged psychological war, let his soldiers rest, eat well, allowed villagers to visit kin in the camp, lit blazing campfires around the region, so the capital would always see the glow of an unquenchable faith. One night, a group of court soldiers deserted, bringing defense maps. Tree summoned his commanders. "We won't spill blood unless we must. But if we must, we strike fast, strike clean." No one seeks vengeance. This isn't a power grab. It's the restoration of justice. The plan to seize the main hall had 3 layers: breach the western gate, advance through the shallow northern moat, and a nighttime raid via an old tunnel built by Đinh Tiên Hoàng for escape. Trí chose to join the 3rd group. At midnight, the militia moved. The city gates were battered with rams. Fires blazed in all directions to sow confusion. Meanwhile, Trí and his strike team slipped through the tunnel, heading for the heart of the capital. Near dawn, they reached the chamber beneath the main hall, but the stone door leading up was locked. Trí used a shield to break the bolt. The sound roared like thunder. Li Hon woke to footsteps. He drew his sword, donned armor, but when he opened his chamber door, Trí stood there, unarmored, unshielded, bare-handed, eyes burning with resolve. "Lower your sword," Trí said. "You were once a loyal vassal. Don't let history name you a usurper." Lê Hoan raised his blade, but his hand trembled. He looked around. No one stood with him anymore, and he understood the end didn't come with blood. It came with a truth he couldn't deny. He dropped his sword. Trí stepped forward, neither smiling nor cheering. He said only, "You'll face public trial. Not for you, but for what this nation needs: justice, not hatred." That morning, the people flooded into the capital. No looting, no destruction. They only watched and clapped as the Đinh dynasty's flag was raised once more over Kinh Thien Hall. After the capital's gates opened, after the thunderous applause echoed like a storm, Trí didn't immediately ascend the throne. Barefoot, he walked through villages' narrow lanes, visited crumbling temples, and stood silently by the tombs of nameless soldiers. To him, victory wasn't the destination. It was the start of a path still strewn with thorns. A new court was formed, but it rose from ashes. Granaries stood empty. Most officials had fled or retired. The people, uncertain, wondered if tomorrow would bring anything beyond the flag raised over Kinh Thien Hall. Trí summoned regional elders, inviting scholars, teachers, and former generals of both the Đinh and Lê regimes. In a meeting on dew-dampened stone floors, he said, "I don't need flatterers. I need those who dare speak truth. The people need rice, not a coronation." The first to object was Kerr Leung. "You can't rule without legitimacy." But Trí smiled. "Legitimacy comes from deeds, not crowns." He began reforms. First, food. He called for communal granaries, distributing rice equally. Wealthy households who contributed willingly were exempt from next year's taxes. Hoarders faced public punishment. The people called it the Red Rice Law for the rice sacks tied with red dragon cloth. Next, security. Trí abolished checkpoints that tormented villagers, replacing them with village councils. Every citizen could submit proposals weekly. Trí himself read them in the Great Hall. One day, a trembling letter arrived. "My son was taken to build the city walls and hasn't returned. Please save him." Trí rode to the outpost himself. When the guards saw the king, they knelt. But Trí only asked, "Where is that mother?" She appeared, ragged, hands shaking. Trí lifted her up and ordered the release of all forced laborers. "A city built on tears will only hold blood in its walls." His words became legend. Not everyone rejoiced. Though, old powers quietly regrouped. They whispered, "A monk can't be king." They spread lies, bribed officials, even hired assassins. One night, Trí was ambushed while visiting villagers outside the city. An arrow grazed his face, lodging in a temple pillar. But the assassins didn't expect the villagers' night patrols. They caught the attacker, spared his life, and brought him to Trí. Trí asked, Who hired you? The assassin trembled. I don't know his name. Just a merchant. Tree sputtered him. Go. Tell your master, I don't fear death. I fear the people losing faith. From then, the region coined a saying, to be king, you must withstand bricks and stones. But if you don't fall, you'll build a city with them. A month later, under pressure from the people and generals, Tree agreed to a coronation, but not in the palace. It was held in the ancient village temple's courtyard beneath a 1,000-year-old banyan tree, on steps where Tree once read with an old scholar. That day, he wore a plain brown robe, head wrapped in red cloth. No throne, no golden canopy, only a vow: I don't promise paradise. I promise only this from today. This land will no longer be ruled by usurpers, and every child born will no longer learn to bow to injustice. Peace is never permanent, especially in a nation just emerging from turmoil. Though Tree had been crowned, and the people had rice to eat, the human heart remained a labyrinth of unpredictability. Within the court, many former lay loyalists still held office. They smiled at Tree, bowed before him, but in the shadows, they gathered, shamed. Some sent secret messages to the borderlands, seeking aid from the Song dynasty. Others used gold to bribe old soldiers, plotting a coup from within. One night, Tree received a report. Someone was secretly recruiting troops north of the Ko River. Their leader was a general once loyal to Lei Huan, now styling himself Heaven's chosen bright king. His name was Zheng Hui. Zheng Hui, once Li Huan's right hand, was notorious for his cruelty. He believed not in justice, but in power. When Lei Huan fell, Hui vanished. Now, he returned like a snake shedding its skin. Tree convened his council. Pham Ku Leung and veteran generals analyzed the situation. Many urged an immediate march to strike first. But Tree said, if we fight without knowing the people's hearts there, it's like digging our own grave. So, Tree disguised himself and, with a small group, posing as merchants, crossed the Ko River. He wanted to see for himself if the people supported Deng Hui. They passed through riverside villages. Everywhere, white flags hung a sign of neutrality. The people flew neither the red dragon banner nor Hui's new standard. They were silent, wary, their eyes weary. An old tea vendor said, we don't need a new king or an old one. We need peace, rice, land that isn't taken. Those words kept Tree silent all night. After the journey, Tree returned to the capital and opened the granaries, sending relief supplies to the Ko River region. He also sent teachers to build village schools. He didn't tell the people to support him. He acted so they could see. Zheng Hui was furious. He couldn't force compliance. The people wouldn't follow. He struck. One night, 3 villages flying, red dragon banners were burned. Children vanished. Elders were slaughtered. The news reached the capital like wildfire. Tree's Enger Flal, no longer the monk of old. He summoned his troops and led them north. The battle began at Jiangdo Ferry. Tree, astride a horse in red armor, led the cavalry. Red banners snapped in the wind. War drums shook the river's heart. The fighting lasted 3 days. Deng Hui fielded mercenaries from the north, well-armed and battle-hardened. But Tree had the people. Every village sent food. Every young man enlisted. Every mother lit incense for her sons at war. On the 4th day, Tree faced Zheng Hui. In thick fog, they met on the battlefield. Sword clashed with sword. No words, only the sound of rage and ideals. Tree didn't kill Hui. He disarmed him and said, kneel. I don't slay the weak, but this nation has no place for traitors. Hui was captured. The people cheered. The enemy's troops scattered. That night, Trí didn't celebrate. He wrote to the capital, "A nation isn't at peace because the strong win. It's at peace when the weak can live." From then on, the Ko River region, once shrouded in gloom, became the first to form village councils. A model where people elected their own leaders under the court's protection. Trí looked to the horizon, seeing a future, not just for kings and nobles, but of the people, for the people, by the people. The victory at the Ko River had barely settled when a new wind stirred from the north. Not a wind carrying road dust or the clatter of hooves, but whispers from the borderlands the Song army was quietly massing. Trí learned of it through a secret letter from merchants. The note was brief. The Song no longer buy salt. They buy iron and horses. Pham Gut Lung read it. Frowning, "The Song are preparing." Trí nodded. "And we must move one step ahead. Rather than wait for invaders to knock." Trí decided to march to the border. Not to fight, but to talk. He led a diplomatic envoy, bearing gifts and a clear message. Đại Cồ Việt sought no war, but it would not bow. The delegation trekked through forested streams. Reaching the outpost of Ung, Song emissaries greeted them coolly, escorting Trí to meet the regional overseer, commander of the Song's southern defences. Their dialogue was a clash of swords wrapped in silk. Trí was courteous, humble, but every word was deliberate. The overseer smiled. "A monk negotiates like a general." Trí replied, "Because I know when blood spills, it's not just soldiers who fall. Unborn generations bear the cost." In the end, they signed a short-term treaty. The Song would not invade. Cồ Việt would not provoke the border. But Trí knew this was temporary. The embers of war still smouldered behind the smoke of peace. Back in the capital, Trí ordered the reinforcement of northern fortifications. He established rotating civilian militias, training even youths and elders in defensive tactics. He also opened a martial academy, educating scholars not only in letters but in military strategy. The people called this era the time of sword and scroll. Yet, in the shadows, some craved war. A group of pro-Song courtiers secretly sent letters north, promising land in exchange for Song support to overthrow Trí. Trí discovered their plot through a dropped letter in the palace. He didn't rage. He stayed silent. The next morning, he called a grand assembly. He executed no one. Standing in the main hall, he read aloud, "A nation cannot be strong if it leans on foreigners to hold its throne. Those who beg for outside help forget their roots, and a tree without roots needs only a gust to topple." From then on, those words were carved above the main hall's gate. And deep within, Trí knew the borderland wind didn't just blow from the north. It rose from hearts, still unwilling to let go of old grudges. As the borderland winds subsided and sunlight pierced through the smoke-stained roofs of village temples, Trí sat alone on the palace steps. Before him stretched the courtyard, where the people had gathered countless times. Behind him stood the throne, a seat he still hadn't grown accustomed to. The greatest question now wasn't how to reclaim the throne, but how to keep the people's hearts. After the sword had been sheathed, Trí launched a series of reforms unprecedented in Đại Cồ Việt history. The court was divided into 3 councils: administration, justice, and People's Assembly. The People's Assembly, a novel idea, allowed each district and province to elect representatives to voice their needs in the capital. Some opposed, arguing the people's knowledge was insufficient. But Trí said, "No one is born knowing how to rule, nor is anyone born unworthy of being heard." Schools sprang up everywhere, teaching not only Chinese characters but also Nom script. Girls attended classes. The poor were exempt from fees. A new adage spread: to govern a nation, first, enlighten its people. The military was restructured. Instead of regional factions, Tree formed a national guard, recruited by merit, not lineage. Commanders rotated every 3 years to prevent power consolidation. Once a year, Tree traveled incognito. No forewarning, no golden canopy, just a plain robe and a sack of rice balls. He visited villages, shared meals with the people, listened to their stories. Each return brought a new law, born from what he witnessed. During one journey, he met an orphaned girl by a coastal village. She said, "I don't know what a king is, but if he's someone who lets me eat my fill, I hope he lives long." Her words prompted Tree to write in his journal, "If a child doesn't need to know my name but still finds life better, that is true glory." By the 10th year of his reign, the nation entered an era of prosperity unseen before. Fields no longer lay fallow, markets bustled, officials dared not extort, for the people knew how to file complaints. Challenges remained. Tensions lingered at the borders. Minor skirmishes flared yearly. Yet, through deft diplomacy, no major war erupted. Within, some plotters persisted. When uncovered, Tree didn't execute them. He offered a choice guard the borders or teach in schools about the perils of political betrayal. Strangely, many chose teaching, and those men, in time, became the dynasty's fiercest defenders. In middle age, Tree established a council of historians. He said nothing is more dangerous than a nation that forgets itself. The council traveled far, recording history from villagers' tales, ancient texts, and legends. A new chronicle emerged, neither overly glorifying nor hiding flaws. On the last day of his 12th year, Tree summoned Pham Kut Lung and handed him an edict. "If I die, build no mausoleum. Use its bricks to raise schools, and carve on their gates, 'From here, our descendants will not need to reclaim the nation, for they've been taught to preserve it from childhood.'" The story ends there, but the legacy does not. A king once without a throne, a nation once without a future, a people once bowed low, all stood tall. And history recorded Tree not as a mere king, but as a reminder, no power, no miracles are needed. Just one person daring to start anew can transform an era.